Our time offers many opportunities. We have a wide range of options at our disposal, whether we want to select a career, a relationship, or the greatest news source. So why isn't being alive the height of bliss? Why are there so many of us who are anxious and unhappy? We must get all that we desire, but how? We have so many options available to us that we end up focusing constantly on all of our options and prospects. In other words, we are exhausting ourselves by trying to do too much. So what can we do? Let's try to get answers to all these and more. Welcome to the video book summary of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Principle 1. You need to choose the battle that is right for you, since everything you undertake in life will be a fight. What do you truly desire from life? What, in other words, is your ultimate objective, the accomplishment you want to have inscribed on your tombstone? It's not really a simple question to respond to, is it? Sure, a lot of people may say they desire happiness, a close-knit family, and a fulfilling profession, but these are very nebulous goals. Additionally, having hazy goals can prevent you from working hard to achieve them. Unfortunately, you will have to work hard if you want to succeed in life. There will be obstacles and hardships along the path, so achieving your goals will require a lot of effort and perseverance. Without a goal you're committed to achieving, you'll give up in the face of difficulty. Let's imagine your ambition is to become a CEO. After all, having all that authority and responsibility makes being a CEO sound pretty amazing. But becoming a CEO is not easy. CEOs frequently put in 60-hour work weeks, are required to make difficult choices, and must constantly be prepared to fire employees. Without a burning desire to succeed as a CEO, you will struggle with the demanding work and have little chance of finding success. Struggle is inevitable, so you need to identify a worthwhile goal. You must decide what it is that you truly enjoy doing. If you are working on something that brings you joy, you won't just be affected by the ongoing struggle, you'll come to adore it. Consider the author. He discovered that he truly enjoyed writing about dating, so he made the decision to concentrate on producing a blog offering relationship advice. At first, it was difficult, but he thrived on the difficulty since he liked what he did. The site eventually gained hundreds of thousands of followers and earned enough money for the author to make it his full-time career after years of hardship. There is no use trying to live an easy life free of difficulty. Finding a cause you want to put up a fight for is the only way to succeed. However, it's also crucial to learn to say no to all of the challenges and chores that make you unhappy. Stop chasing after the things in life that don't make you happy and be ruthless. Pay attention to the few outstanding things and pay no attention to the rest. Principle 2. Suffering might result in wonderful things, but you'll never be happy if you don't hold the appropriate ideals. The field of art contains some of the best instances of accomplishment attained through hardship. After all, we typically picture the ideal artist as someone who is poor and unrecognized and who won't give up until her brilliance is acknowledged. And contrary to what you might think, this stereotype is really more true. Think about the musician Dave Mustaine. When his band was on the verge of success in 1983, Mustaine was fired. After being rejected, Mustaine erupted in rage and became determined to prove his former bandmates wrong. He worked tirelessly for 2 years to hone his abilities and find the musicians needed to form an even stronger band. He later founded Megadeth, a massively successful band that went on to sell over 25 million records. However, Mustaine wasn't content despite Megadeth's success. He persisted in evaluating his accomplishments in comparison to those of his former band. Unluckily for him, this band was Metallica, one of the most well-known musical groups in the world. Despite his clear triumphs, Mustaine believed himself to be a failure since he compared himself to Metallica. Mustaine's ongoing unhappiness draws attention to a widespread risk, comparing one's achievement to that of others. Mustaine believed that the only way to feel successful was to outperform his former comrades, which meant that he was condemned to failure. It goes without saying that you need to develop better standards by which to evaluate your accomplishments. Pete Best is a wonderful illustration of how having the proper ideals can make you happy. Best was expelled from a band that was on the verge of greatness, much like Dave Mustaine. Unfortunately for Best, this band just so happened to be the Beatles, the most popular band in history. As he saw his old bandmates succeed, Best descended into a state of severe sadness. He changed his values later though. He came to the realization that a lovely family and a fulfilling home life were what he truly desired in life. He was still passionate about music, but he didn't want his career or lack thereof to define who he was. A joyful, contented life resulted from this reorientation, and Best even resumed loving music production, this time for unpromising bands. So when it comes to happiness, our principles matter more than success. Principle 3. Since many people tend to focus on negative values, it's critical to identify some positive ones. We learned in the last video that judging your value by how others perceive you will only leave you feeling unsatisfied. And this is only one of several shady principles that can prevent you from achieving happiness. Take joy as an example. Many people decide to prioritize pleasure in their lives. However, prioritizing pleasure over all else is unhealthy. In fact, drug addicts, adulterers, and gluttons hold this as their core value. According to research, people who prioritize pleasure are more likely to experience anxiety and depression. Using your level of material achievement as a metric for your life is another perverse value. This value is highly prevalent, and you've certainly bought into it at some point. Examples include wanting a bigger car than your neighbor has or flashing your brand new Rolex. However, it doesn't result in better well-being. Studies have proven that having more money doesn't make us happier if our basic necessities are met. Furthermore, pursuing wealth at the expense of other values such as family, honesty, or integrity can be harmful. So how do you stay away from shady values? Well, following base values often results from a lack of noble ideals. So, you must decide on principles worth upholding if you don't want to be a hedonistic fool or envious of your neighbor's new Mercedes. These admirable traits ought to, adhere to reality, be of service to society, have a quick and manageable impact. Take integrity. Being honest is a fantastic value to uphold because you have control over it. It is grounded in reality, and it is beneficial because it offers others honest criticism. Creativity, generosity, and humility are a few additional values that fit these three requirements. Principle 4. Even if you may feel like victims, real change in your life can only come about when you accept complete responsibility for it. Marathons attract thousands of amateur runners each year. In order to support charitable organizations, many of them do this. Many marathon runners struggle to finish, yet most are happy of what they've accomplished. Now picture yourself being compelled to participate in a marathon rather than choosing to run one on your own. Regardless of how good you actually run, it's likely that you would hate the entire experience. It loses its delight when you feel obligated to act in a certain way. Sadly, a lot of people live their lives as though their experiences were forced upon them. We perceive ourselves as the unfortunate victims of our circumstances, whether it be a missed bus, a failed job interview, or a loved one's rejection. Let's examine a severe instance of this issue. In 19th century America, William James was born into an affluent, aristocratic family. He was unwell and his back would cramp up and he would frequently vomit. His father frequently made fun of his lack of talent as he attempted to build a name for himself as a painter despite his early aspirations. He consequently made the decision to pursue a career in medicine and later left medical school. James was sick and unhappy and he had no work or family to turn to for assistance. But after that, he discovered the writings of philosopher Charles Peirce. James was moved by Peirce's main thesis, which was that each person should be fully responsible for their own life. James came to see that his sorrow was a result of his conviction that he was a victim of external forces. He put the responsibility for his predicament on factors he had no control over, such as his illness or his father's critiques, which made him feel helpless. He came to the realization that he was accountable for his life and his deeds, and armed with this knowledge, he made a fresh start. James eventually became a pioneer in American psychology after many years of toil. Therefore, try to remember William James and strive to assume responsibility for your own life if you ever feel like a victim. Imagine your partner leaving you. It would be far too simple to accuse your ex-partner of being cold and careless, but it would be more prudent to consider how you contributed to the breakdown of the relationship. Maybe you didn't do your fair share of the chores around the house, or maybe you didn't encourage your partner's dreams. You may stop making the same mistakes again by acknowledging them and improving. You can only lead a better, happier life after that. If you're liking the content of this video, please feel free to buy the book or get a free month of Audible. Both links are given in the description below. This will help our channel grow. Thank you. Principle 5. When our identities are threatened, we frequently run away, but Buddhism can be helpful. Imagine this: you work as a senior management at a sizable, prestigious organization. You enjoy your work and the pay, you drive a great car, dress well, and are well liked by your co-workers. You enjoy being a senior manager the most. You identify as a senior manager. Imagine for a moment that you have the opportunity to get to the top. The potential is not without significant hazards, though if you don't execute it flawlessly, you lose everything: your identity, your job, your car, and your respect. Would you accept the risk? Most people would not take the chance. This is due to the desire to run away from anything that threatens our identity, or what the author refers to as Manson's law of avoidance. Although avoiding significant risks, like the one just mentioned, may seem prudent, our frantic attempts to protect our identities frequently serve as more of a burden than an aid. For instance, many aspiring authors and painters shy away from selling or promoting their work. They are afraid that if they display their writing or art, no one will find it appealing. They have constructed their identity around the potential to become a great artist. Therefore, trying and failing would ruin that identity, so they never even attempt. Fortunately, practicing Buddhism provides a means to mitigate the drawbacks of Manson's law of avoidance. Identity, according to Buddhism, is a delusion. Any labels you assign to yourself, rich, poor, happy, sad, successful, or a failure, are only figments of your imagination. We shouldn't allow them control our life because they aren't real. Therefore, you must learn to let go of who you are. Being free of an identity can be an amazing experience. For instance, you might have always thought of yourself as a career-minded person, which meant that you constantly prioritized your job over your family and interests. You'll be able to do whatever makes you happy, whether it's spending time with your children or building model aeroplanes, once you're free of this limiting self-image. Principle 6. If you want to experience positive change, you must acknowledge your shortcomings and insecurities. Don't you just detest obnoxious individuals who always believe they are correct? Those arrogant know-it-alls who simply won't listen when you tell them they're wrong. Thank God you're not yourself like that. Well, you are, regrettably. We all occasionally have the illusion that we are right when we are not. Let's use the recent engagement of one of the author's friends as an illustration. Nearly everyone thought the future groom was a fine, amiable person, except by the brother of the friend's fiancée. He just wouldn't let up in his criticism of his sister's choice of mate and was certain that her fiancé would damage her in the end. The majority of people, including his own sister, recognized the brother was mistaken. However, despite their best efforts, they were unable to persuade him to consider the notion that he could be being a little insane. You must be willing to constantly question whether you are correct if you don't want to behave like this brother. You can only get through these blind spots where you mistakenly believe you're right by doing this. This is more difficult than it seems because our erroneous ideas frequently mask our fears. We will learn difficult truths about ourselves if we continually reflect on our choices and deeds. Going back to the hypercritical brother, it's possible that his disdain of the prospective groom was a way for him to cover up his own anxieties. Perhaps he harbored jealousy since his sister had found love but he hadn't. He might have been envious of his sister's focus on her fiancé instead of him. He might have even been irate because his sister didn't seem to care much about what he desired. Whatever the cause, he found it simpler to make rash judgments than to face his own insecurities. Fortunately, you don't have to make the same mistake. You can act in a healthier, happier manner by being willing to challenge your beliefs and address your insecurities. Principle 7. If you don't learn to regulate it, romantic love can be destructive. Perhaps the most well-known love story in history is that of Romeo and Juliet. Even so, the story is far from joyful. It involves murder, banishment, and blood feuds, and it ends with both loves killing themselves. The tragic story of those star-crossed lovers emphasizes the negative effects of passionate love. According to studies, having a passionate relationship stimulates the brain in a way that cocaine does. In other words, you get up really high before coming crashing back down. You then try to get high again, perhaps not always with the same individual, which is a formula for agony and suffering. Shakespeare's period recognized the risks associated with romantic love. Romeo and Juliet may have even been written by Shakespeare as a condemnation of romantic yearning as an unhealthy obsession. Up until the 19th century, the majority of partnerships and marriages were founded more on the complementary skill sets of the two partners than on their intense love. Of course, the situation has changed. Modern society frequently holds romantic love up as the ideal, which can result in heartbreak. What can you then do? Should you completely abandon the notion of romance? Not exactly. Whether romantic love meets certain requirements determines whether it is healthy or unhealthy. When both partners utilize the relationship as a means of escaping their difficulties, it is called an unhealthy love. They may be using their affections for one another as a diversion because, for instance, they are unhappy with their life. Unfortunately, no one is ever able to conceal personal issues indefinitely, so this avoidance as passion always goes south. On the other side, healthy love happens when both spouses are fully committed to the union. Instead of using it as a diversion, they are committed to one another. Each spouse supports their significant other rather than focusing on their own feelings. However, this assistance must be wished for. Difficulties will arise if one partner crosses the line and tries to control the other by, for instance, trying to address every one of their problems. It is obvious that a relationship is toxic when one person attempts to dominate the other. Principle 8. Because people are afraid of dying, they attempt to continue living beyond death. You may not want to consider it, but you will pass away one day. How we respond to this unsettling fact will greatly influence how we conduct our lives. We can refer to Ernest Becker's work in order to properly comprehend the degree to which death has control over our life. Doctor of anthropology Becker was a bit of a maverick. Although his unusual methods and early demise restricted his academic career, he did produce The Denial of Death, a significant work on death. Becker offered two primary concepts in this book. The first is that they are deathly afraid. Humans are the only animals that have the capacity to consider hypothetical scenarios. We can consider how our life would have turned out if we had opted to major in a different subject in college or, for example, had chosen to become a pharmacist rather than a teacher. There is a drawback to this capacity for speculation though. We are able to envision what life will be like after we have passed on. This leads us to Becker's second key idea, that because we are aware that we eventually die, we attempt to forge a conceptual self that will endure even after our passing. In other words, we devote our mortal lives to pursuing endeavors that will live on as our legacies. This ambition drives some people to chase fame, while others might aim to leave their imprint in business, politics, or religion. But society faces issues as a result of this desire for immortality. War, devastation, and suffering have been brought about by people's desire to shape the world, or at least a portion of it, as they see fit. Additionally, it's not good for us personally. Stress and worry are brought on by our urgent desire to leave our mark. Fortunately, there is a simple answer. We ought to give up trying to live forever. We need to put fame and power aside and instead put our attention on the now. Find purpose in the here and now and work to promote love and happiness wherever you are. And giving a fuck shouldn't be reserved only for morbid ideas. Trying to please everyone, as you've discovered in these videos, just causes suffering. Focus on the activities you find enjoyable, whether it's a pleasurable struggle or a fulfilling relationship. If you want to live a happy life, everything else is just a waste of time. In a nutshell, the main idea of this work is, we strive to do too much in life, which causes stress and discontentment. We must all develop the ability to stop giving a fuck about the things that are hurting us. Decide what you truly want to care about and adopt a more positive outlook on life in general, love, and work. Choose what matters to you, then disregard everything else. Be utterly brutal in your approach. For instance, imitate multimillionaire CEO Mohammed Al-Arian, who chose to leave his lucrative position in order to spend more time with his little daughter. Please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel.